was delivered in favor of the Republic of Zambia, then you ask us about a question as a party. I think what should be made very clear is that it has been the wish of the government of the Republic of Zambia from the onset that it is important that a platform for engagement is established. I'm sure you're aware that so many efforts were put in place, and there was even an envoy, former Vice President Kavindele, and also a traditional leader, Chief Mumbi, among other people that were engaged to see how government could have a common understanding with the bereaved family members. The situation is that the efforts that were put in place could not yield the much needed facts, results. And you are aware, before you even get to court, that to have a former head of state buried elsewhere undermines Zambia's sovereignty. And there has been case law to that effect. And I was on this platform when I discussed something similar to that, the Kawechi case, which is instructive to the effect that public interest must override family interest or individual interest when it comes to the head of state, and that the president is not an ordinary citizen. They need to be given a dignified send-off. That is in the judgment. And there is also the former, you remember the presidential burial site. There is an act of parliament to that effect, enacted before the UPND came into leadership, that being a presidential burial site established by an act of parliament, it means that presidents must be buried there impliedly. So when there was contestation as to where KK needed to be buried, the ruling is instructive. Public interest, take precedence. Override individual family interest. And this is what brought us to where we are. Luckily, we have this judgment, again, which goes alongside the existing case law in Zambia. It is within the right of the family members to contest, or rather to appeal the decision, okay, at the appellate court in South Africa. But again, the position remains. This judgment for us as citizens should help us understand that what could have been our lost posterity will be well documented, because there will be no questions asked by the future generation on what could have happened. It would have been a serious regional blunder had the judgment gone in favor of the family, because then it was going to be the first time in the SADC region experiencing such an anomaly. The beauty is that, like many Zambians of like mind, it has been the view of many of our brothers and sisters in the region, Namibia, that the president be buried in Zambia and be given a dignified send-off.
When this issue went to court, the AG came here at Diamond TV and they explained very clearly that government will spend time between the time that the issue went to court and the time the judgment was rendered for us to discuss as government and the family. But this did not happen.
No, it's not that it did not happen. There were conversations that were going on. There were engagements that were going on. But whether those engagements yielded the much needed result or not is another issue.
Because the family representative, Makebizulu,
is another issue.
Did mention that there was no engagement whatsoever that happened.
Let me tell you something. Government obviously will not spend time justifying the processes of engagement. The very fact that the people that needed to engage directly from the government side had to use other envoys does not mean that the government was not engaging. Okay? Different people in their individual capacity and those that are close to the family were engaged. If this route or approach could not work, any other method could be used. But if things fell apart and that it did not succeed before the judgment, that shouldn't be a problem. So at the end of the day, we need to begin to encourage the family to come to the table with the government. The judgment is not a matter of a win or a loss. No one has won. It is a national issue where the nation must have the former head of state buried here. President HH is simply a representative of the people of Zambia. After he has served his term, he will go. But Zambia will remain. Just like he found a law that establishes the presidential burial site, which was enacted before he became president. Because the people that enacted that law had the integrity and dignity of presidents in mind.
From the side of the party, what are you getting on the ground in terms of where President Edgar Lungu must be buried? I know for a fact that the court, yes, in South Africa and in Zambia, have made a pronouncement that public interest, overrides individual family interests. But some also would ask what quantifies public interest, because to some, they would argue that many of the Zambians are with the Lungu family, not the government.
Well, there has been quite a number of case laws on issues relating to public interest. In other words, you're basically coming up with something that will not injure not only this generation, but even the future generation. The challenge that we have is what you may refer to as some Zambians. You're basically looking at the political divide. And this is why we don't need to look at some of these things for using a political lens. We need to transcend political lines. And remember that today is ECL, tomorrow it will be another head of state. So what kind of history are we going to leave for the people of Zambia? So even when you talk about burying in South Africa, there were more commentators from the political lines than the family itself. Even the people that traveled, whom you may have seen as family friends, they were politicians.
Probably because
but that does not mean.
Politician.
But that does not mean they have no right to mourn when they have to mourn. It is within their right. But I'm trying to demonstrate to you that the arguments that are being spearheaded by some members of the public are purely based on political lines. And this should not be the approach that we should take as a country. As a matter of fact, you recall that Makebi Zulu did mention that they wanted the body flown to Lusaka, then President HH should not be in attendance. And that you understand that this is a former head of state. There could be other presidents in the region who may want to come and pay their last respect to ACL. Now, the moment you have other heads of state coming in, you're inviting the president to come. So, before you get to reasonableness, look at what the existing state of affairs is presenting to you. The moment you have a visiting head of state, the one who welcomes and receives that head of state is President HH. Including the airspace that you have is controlled by ZAF. You are basically saying this issue of burying ACL in Zambia goes beyond President HH. It is a national issue. And as things stand, I think
perhaps maybe take a bit of some time to explain on that, because I think you've seen, what has been spoken about on social media, and many people are creating assumptions and perceptions that what is the issue? Why does President Hakainde Hichilema want to see the body of Edgar Lungu? What is it about the body of Edgar Lungu that HH really wants?
It's not about also seeing. It's about doing the right thing. The same question can be asked the other way. What is it that somebody is scared of, that a person who has died should have regulated mourners? Isn't that a taboo? A neighbor dies. I'm sure you know, my brother, that even a person with an impairment on the street is mourned. Unless there is a condition or a disease that may spread and they fear, like in the case of the COVID-19, where they would keep members of the public away. So the problem that we have is that we are narrowing the Republic of Zambia to President HH and not to national interest. That we need to look beyond President HH. Once he's gone, there will be another president.
You don't also think
the question is,
President HH must declare interest and say, look, perhaps I will delegate.
Why would you say that
to
in the
the
first
vice
place?
president?
The question you ask yourself is that what you want to see? What will it resolve in the first place?
Unity.
ECA is gone. What you are proposing is actually creates more confusion. I've told you that after you've done that, who is going to receive the presidency that are visiting the country? Because you don't want the state to take part.
Well,
the moment you say state funeral, who is the head of state?
The president.
Yes. So why are we contradicting ourselves?
He can't delegate to the vice president.
When you say, no, that power is discretionary. So the question is, who is saying we should not delegate? Conversations failed. Government went to court. The court made a pronouncement. The Constitution Office bearer, who is the Chief Executive of the Republic of Zambia, is President HH. He is not there by chance. He was elected by millions of citizens. And now we should not reduce a funeral of a former head of state to only 3, 4, 5 people. And this is why there was a question in the South African court that what was the wish of the deceased, that he be buried in Zambia. Whose wish is it that we should bury in South Africa? It is not ECL. So if you were confronted with such a situation, whose wish would you go for? The wish of the deceased or the wish of those that are alive? And what will they have achieved anyway? Will have lost as a country because it undermines Zambia's integrity. It undermines Zambia's sovereignty to get the former head of state and have them buried.
You say here that this is not a win for, it's not a win or a loss for anyone, but it's, you know, it must bring us together. It doesn't appear so for some of your cadres from the ruling party. They seem to celebrate that finally Akatumbi Kakwa Edgar Lungu Kalaisa.
Every political party.
You don't find that regrettable, really, that your party cadres are now disappointing. You're preaching, you know, a message of unity, but your party cadres.
Yeah, that presents a very unfortunate situation. But every political party have officials that issue statements to give the position of the political party. It has office bearers. Okay, every political party. So, as a journalist, you know the right source.
So we must not hold accountable party members for what they say.
Of course.
Officials, because the assumption is that they're getting blessings from you, MD.
This is what I'm telling you, that as a journalist, you know officials to invite when you want to speak to your PND. You're not going to get a blogger and start talking to them, because they may not even occupy a single official position within the party. But again, this is what social media has brought, because you have seen that even everyone has become a journalist. This is social media, where people want now to say anything sometimes. Not that they have blessings from the party, but the party has a position. I think in yesterday's press conference, we were very clear. Government's desire now is that we need to encourage the family members to engage with government so that we can bury the former head of state, and this should be history. It is time we came together as a country, as opposed to calling each other names. It's not time to scandalize the former first family. They have mourned for a long time. They need to get a life and live a normal life.
What are you saying to party cadres from the UPND that are wearing regalia to insult the former president?
Many of them, a few, or one or two, who may have been involved with such activities have been reprimanded. And the UPND has within itself the party disciplinary regulations, which basically regulate conduct of members. So measures are being undertaken to deal with such cases. That's why moving forward, I'm sure you've seen that many members of the UPND have taken a different trajectory. And what we are saying is that there is no departure of the party from the government position. Government is looking for an engagement process, and the citizens with like mind that are going to support the very fact that we need to unite together. Can you imagine how interesting it would be for the country that government and the former First Family have now come together? They've agreed to give President ECA a dignified send-off. A military parade is put in place. It's an official funeral. We bury and we move on as a country. It will put Zambia at another level. That is what government desires. That's what the party is looking forward to seeing. And where I stand, this is the position of the party.
Time is taken for the UPND. Many believe that you are brought in from the past side of the party to come bring about damage control, for what has already been destroyed. And so far, you're failing as MD to control the damage, because for some, the UPND have done nothing for the past 4 years that they've been in office.
Now, if UPND has done nothing, then we need to check the news script of Diamond, because you're the ones that have been running a number of programs. Almost in each script, you're going to find either there are women who are beneficiaries of CDF empowerment, or there are youths that have been trained under CDF. And I've seen a lot of reports. For those that are watching, they can actually check online and search for some of those reports on Diamond TV. You covered them. Secondly, you are on record as a TV station of publishing free education as a promise and as a fulfilled promise. The point is that you are on record again of reading a script showing that we promised the people of Zambia that we shall restructure the debt, and it has succeeded, and making Zambia the first country under the G20 framework to have succeeded in restructuring the debt. What does the restructuring of the debt mean to an ordinary citizen? It basically means where the government was supposed to pay. For example, you remember that under the time of Dr. Walyangandu, you were being told that government at that time was spending 50% of money collected in the treasury used for debt servicing. Then 40% going to salaries and remunerations. Government was only running on 10%. As a result of that particular situation, Dr. Walyangandu announced on the floor of Parliament that government was stopping to recruit. There was now going to be employment freeze. Government was now stopping to increase salaries. There was now going to be wage freeze. Government was stopping to give new allowances because we were debt choked. Government was also stopping to continue with projects that had not exceeded 80%. In other words, the project stalled. Now, with debt restructuring, because we had already defaulted, by the way, in 2020, and we were the first country to default, Eurobond. And when you default, there are challenges.
Because of the COVID-19.
It's not the only, because Zambia was not the only country that borrowed, so that is not the reason. The reason is simple. It's because there was no fiscal discipline. So many things had gone wrong before even COVID-19 came. Remember that the time COVID-19 was coming, money was due.
And we had stories that we didn't have the money. We had the money. It was a strategy to default, and so many other countries defaulted after us.
No, listen, you can give me 5 countries that defaulted.
So many other countries defaulted.
So the point I'm trying to drive home is that what that left us with is that you cannot have a strategy in the first place to stop recruiting citizens. You cannot have a strategy to fail to pay salaries. Because government had failed to pay salaries. They had to get money from NAPSA to pay salaries for civil servants. You cannot have it as a strategy to fail to pay farmers, 258,000 farmers in 2 years. You can't call that a strategy. You can't call it a strategy to kill the mining sector, then relegate over 20,000 citizens on the copper belt to joblessness. What kind of strategy is that? And which president in the world would want to see people suffering and being thrown into joblessness? Thousands of youths moving on the street with qualifications which were just rotting on their shelves. Can that be called a strategy? It was a failed leadership. But this is what crooked people do. When they fail to perform, they'll tell you it's a strategy. Who can have a strategy to fail grade 7? And people buy in that it's a strategy. So basically, government at that time engaged the IMF many times. They failed because there were a lot of problems. The fight against corruption was not giving a good sign to the international community. Number one. Number two, you remember that social cash transfer had gone missing. For 1 week, even government misplaced the bank account. After a week, that's when they came back that they found the money, which prompted the UK to withdraw their money and ask for a refund. IMF was not available to give us the money because there was fiscal indiscipline, too much misapplication. Then there were no measures being put, serious measures being put by government to ensure that this was kept, even after these were discovered. The next point that you need to also understand, you had situations in the Ministry of Education where 3 million will just go missing, developing legs. Then when you go there, you find that they have destroyed the evidence. You could not find files and who signed. That's what was happening.
In the interest of people knowing really what you've done for them, because like I mentioned earlier on, MD, time is ticking.
I was getting there. I was getting there. You brought in something. So I was saying, what have we done for council workers whom we promised that you allow the UPND to come into leadership because they were owed 7 to 15 months salary arrears? They were paid. Number two, what have we done to parents across the country? Parents from Simuuwe, when we promised them that your children will not pay examination fees, government will pay. Your children will not pay user fees and tuition fees, government will pay. Government is paying. That's what we've done for them. What have we done for the people of the Copper Belt who were crying for the mines to be reopened? We have resuscitated the mining sector, and today as we speak, we have better investors there. The mines are back and running. And we are beginning to see slowly the fruits manifesting.
When you mean better investors, you mean vendetta?
Of course. Why not? Because among many of them, because they can now run. What was lacking that time was not Vedanta. There was no leadership, my brother. The same company, but it's running differently. I want to demonstrate to you why there was no leadership. Before the Lusaka and Ndola Dual Carriage Way groundbreaking ceremony was done, way in the opposition, President HH put it on record that given an opportunity, you can do this road half the price. People doubted. Some people doubted. Today, as we speak, it's even below half. Some of the companies, one company that was initially granted the contract, came back and said, we are ready to do the same road at half the price. What does that mean? Skills and differences in leadership. Same company, same project. The company comes and say, we can do the road at half the price. That's what I'm saying. So it's purely a point of departure in terms of challenges. But let me get to the issues. What did we promise citizens with regard to thuggery behavior? That there will be the rule of law. Government will not allow citizens to be hacking each other, moving with unregistered guns, shooting at fellow electorates. Here we are. We can go for elections. What we see during the aftermath of the election are simply debates and people saying it was free, it was not free and fair, and so on and so forth. What did we promise media institutions? That will not be closing media houses because they are featuring those with dissenting views. Here we are. True to our promise, as you and I are discussing, you have so many of your colleagues in the journalism sector who have been recruited by government to demonstrate the issue of recruitment and job creation is real. As I speak to you today, in the manufacturing sector alone, we've revamped the manufacturing sector. So far, over 13,000 jobs have been created in the manufacturing sector. We have revamped the Ministry of Tourism by merely putting in place or formulating policies that are progressive to spur growth in the tourism sector, such as relaxing visa conditions, so that we can allow as many tourists as possible to come into our country, thereby giving a trickle-down effect on those in the hospitality industries like thee, hotels you are seeing.
So could you give figures to that? Are you able to quantify in terms of how much you've done to reduce the poverty rate in our country? Because suggestions are that the poverty levels are still on the rise.
Now,
MD.
Let me give you the context. You and I agree that inflation has started going down. You and I do recognize that about in Zambia, Tishima. And you and I do agree that government did something for the price of minimum you are seeing to go down after we were hit by that drought. You know that when there is a drought, there is a scarcity of food on the market, and when there's scarcity of food on the market, prices of commodities will go up. Then what did government do? It's not just magic. It did not just happen by nature. You recall that government earmarked 17,000 farmers to enable them, capacitate them with irrigation equipment.
Has it reduced the price of minimum?
Of course, I'm sure you've seen the price of minimum beginning to go down.
From where we are.
And where we are right now, as a result of certain initiatives that government undertook, such as SAFE, which is a credit facility given to different citizens who also responded positively to government clarion call to invest in education and in agriculture and take agriculture as a business. We have a bumper harvest. Just Eastern Province alone has managed to produce 535,000 metric tons. Central Province alone is over 500,000 metric tons. Now, what that means is that when we have produced more, that was the president's voice.
Yes.
Can we all plant when we produce more? Then there will be no hunger. Some people took it as a joke. Today, as we speak, we are beginning to see prices of millimil shaking. I was in Kalulushi about a month ago, where we found a 25 kg bag of millimil breakfast was going at 210, which was not the case before the pump harvest. Meaning something has been done.
But people expected more than that. I agree that even in my area, you find that a 25 kg bag of minimum is fetching around 210, 215.
We now have yes.
But I think the promises were very clear. And I don't want you to run away from what you know, and this was on record. President Hakainde himself promised the Zambian people to enjoy 50 kwacha bag of minimum, that is a 25 kg. Have you forgotten about that promise?
That's a very good reminder. But we did not promise a drought, because there is a relationship between planting more and productivity in the Ministry of Agriculture.
You promised leadership.
So now,
and
I'm coming, and I want to demonstrate leadership. Instead of crying over spilt milk, government responded first of all by ensuring that nobody died. When the president was reading his speech, delivering his speech on the floor of Parliament during the SONA, when he said no one would die, we heard some people murmuring. To date, you've not told us how many died. Now, the drought is not part of the manifesto. So when it hit than never before, the president undertook an initiative to declare it as a national disaster, because it had ripple effects on the electricity, which continue to haunt us today. A drought than ever before, affecting Zimbabwe, affecting Malawi.
Do you think?
Now, leadership simply means not keeping quiet when you are confronted with a crisis, but being responsive by putting in place mitigation measures. And government did just that. That is why you were able to see emergent social cash transfer, which meant that in addition to the existing social cash transfer, there were more citizens that were added to be given this particular facility, and also cash for work as a way of addressing poverty. It's an economic issue. When you talk about cash for work, you're basically calling people almost randomly, come and do this very little work for you to get a bag of millimil, as a way of attending to the crisis. Those are mitigation measures. These are associated with leadership. You can only find such initiatives where you have scarcity of resources being undertaken when there is leadership. The next thing that I want to bring out is that as a sign of quality leadership, President HH knew that the coming in of this drought had a ripple effect on the supply of electricity, because our country has been dependent on electricity, water, hydro-generated power.
As we move to load shedding,
at around...
As we move to load shedding, just clarify again with the Zambian people watching. So the Zambian people must forget the 50 kwacha bag of millimil, a 25 kg bag of 25 kwacha before next year.
We will eventually get there, because one thing that you need to understand is that development is a process. You get the point? And not an event. When you talk about having enough food in the country, even having enough food has rules. You must first of all plant maize, and you wait for it to germinate until it matures and it's time for harvesting. When it has been harvested, it has to be processed to get to the shelf for someone to buy it. But how can people buy when there is employment freeze? Then, therefore, we must agree that the idea to recruit over 45,000 teachers is an economic issue. It simply means you have given a family, over 45,000 families, which has never happened from independence, an income on a monthly basis, which they never had. When you talk about recruitment of over 18,000 health workers, you are basically saying if one employee is equal to 5 members of the family, you are feeding 5 out of 1 person that has been employed. It's an economic issue. It borders on eating. When you talk about reinstatement of meal allowances, which were initially scrapped off, it's an economic issue if you ask students, because you are enabling them to access meals and adding nutrition as a very critical component in the education sector.
So are we saying that 50 kwacha is still in progress for people to buy bag of minimum 50 kwacha? Still in progress?
Yes, but look, we cannot easily project that it will come tomorrow, because there are a lot of extenuating factors. We need to face facts. There is no government without challenges.
So can we say that we failed?
This is why, no, there's no failure. To fail is where you have no solution. But I've just given you a solution. Okay? So if you are given a question in class to answer, then you have no solution to it because you have failed. But I've given you
to demonstrate. Is long, and at the time that you are about to submit, the lecturer would have already gotten the assignment papers.
I want to tell you this, that now running the economy, you want to attend to the problem, there are processes that lead you somewhere. I'll give you an example. For you to get electricity when there is no water, and you have quality leadership, which has found the answer, which may not be immediately, it's long term. But then, moving forward as a country, you will have secured your future, because you can now start having alternative source of energy, as the case is where the president commissioned the 100 megawatts, which has the capacity of connecting about 50,000 households. Meaning, you are now going to help those families over time who are spending so much money to find alternative source of energy at a household level. It's a process.
How easy to look at Zambians in the eyes, Mr. Simuuwe, when President Hakainde Hichilema promised and painted a picture that Dubai, that has deserts, has electricity 24/7, yet you, a country that has got so much water bodies and a very good rainfall pattern, don't have electricity. How easy do you find it to look at Zambians in the eye and backtrack at what you said?
Now, this is what I was trying to tell you, that when we were confronted with a lot of water and good rainfall, you had load shedding, which you could go up to over 20 hours. And that was the argument. But what happens where you have a drought and all the farmers in over 5 provinces are telling you that we have a drought, will die of hunger, and 6 million are threatened? They are not part of even the manifesto. But then there is leadership in place which did not focus on complaining, but they had to find an alternative. So I'm telling you that food was provided so that citizens that were confronted by the drought could not die. And the government had to put their foot down to ensure that something was done. Now, we cannot... I'm coming.
And which is people experiencing over 19 hours of load shedding for the past 1 year?
No, right now things have changed. I'm sure you are aware that there are so many different places now that are even getting 9 hours of electricity. I'm sure you know that. There has been adjustments. And you are told also...
9 hours of productivity is very less.
What answer do you have for the opposition to load shedding? You have no answers. But what are the answers that we are providing? Alternative source of energy. How did we do it? Because they destroyed ZESCO, my brother. ZESCO owing over $1.6 billion. This government started by, first of all, mending the mess that was created within ZESCO. by ensuring that at least 1 billion is paid. Just Mamba Collieries alone was owed $500 million, almost close to the Eurobond. Government had to come up with a strategy, which they are calling Domestic Debt Dismantling Strategy 2022 to 2026. The idea was to come up with formalities and modalities of addressing the huge domestic debt that government was owed. And as you and I are speaking, over 75% of the suppliers who supplied goods and services under the previous government have been cleared. In other words, the country was in ICU. Before it can take off, so many things have to be resolved, and I've been demonstrating what we have been resolving.
And you don't think the country is still in ICU because we're getting into the next election with price of fuel very high, with the cost of living very high, with the price of minimum very high, with load shedding, the worst load shedding in living memory.
I don't think it's West, because I've just told you that where we're coming from, it was like this, now it has reduced. Now, I'm also trying to tell you that if you say it's an ICU, and then at the same time you run news, and the young ones are watching Diamond, and they remember that Diamond had to show youths that were being recruited, they will say Diamond could be hypocritical. Because
I'm talking about
on one hand, I'm giving an example.
I'm talking about, you also explain about facts.
Now, I'm saying development is a multi-dimensional term. That's why I'm taking you into all this, so that you don't stick to one problem. Running the country does not mean you never experience any problem. Running the country simply means when you are confronted with a challenge, you have the right leadership to respond to the challenge. And what I'm demonstrating to you is not that the government has failed, that this is what government is doing. And on the electricity, is what I was getting there. I was trying to now demonstrate, first of all, in what state we found ZESCO. We found ZESCO failing, ZESCO owing so much money. And I've just demonstrated how much government has paid. And in addition to paying, government undertook an initiative to bring other cooperating partners on board. And as we speak, we have ZESCO with China Power signing an MOU to set up solar plants. 100 megawatts, Kariba Dam, 100 megawatts, another one, Ikafio Gorge, another one, Chisamba, commissioned already, another one that is coming, approaching in Iteztezi. In addition to that, government formulated policies that should help us overcome such challenges in case we are confronted with the same challenges in future, by introducing another policy position of net metering, which allows citizens like yourself to be able to produce using solar alternative source of energy and be able to be connected to the national grid and get a life. You earn a living out of that because you'll be paid for that. And remove the rigidities to allow those that are in the private sector generating power to be able to even import power and interact with ZESCO. As we speak, you heard there was an announcement from government. ZESCO signed about 29 MOUs out of about 31 MOUs with different institutions in the area of expanding our trajectory in the production of energy.
So these are long-term measures that government is putting up to address the electricity.
So short-term measures were put, but short-term measures, you know that they are called short-term measures because they are not supposed to stay, and they are not sustainable. Short-term measures, some of the short-term measures that were put in place were the crisis. Government started setting up now generators, and I talked about it last time I came here. Generators in strategic market areas where it was felt that there were brothers and sisters that were involved in tailoring, who were doing pedicure, who were doing manicure, who were engaged in various activities using electricity. But our government acknowledges that the running of the country has not been without a problem. And part of the problem has been the drought, which is not out of human enactment, but as a natural disaster, of which man has no control. We can only find mitigation measures to it. Then secondly, you talk about the price of fuel on the world market, understanding that there was no single country with cheap fuel. So here is what government did, because they are reasoning and they would want to avoid challenges in the future. This is why the president went and visited his counterpart in Angola and signed an MOU with intention of putting up a pipeline, oil pipeline from Angola to here. As we are speaking now, you saw what was happening in Dola, signing that we are going to now have groundbreaking ceremony to have first ever oil refinery. And the government of the Republic of Zambia, through the president's negotiating skills, succeeded in persuading our colleagues in Angola to get some shares from the generation of crude oil there, which is a positive for you and me and for the future of this country. And this is something that has been seriously and positively discussed by other countries. I saw it on TV in Kenya. I saw it on TV in South Africa. They're talking about Zambia. I saw it online. You saw a lot of bloggers talking about it, that Zambia is making history. They are doing things that could only be seen by those that were coming from overseas to invest in Africa. They have done something that has
long-term projects.
So, secondly, long-term projects are the ones that secure the economy for a long term. Short-term are impromptu decisions that are made to abate a certain situation so that it does not create chaos.
One politician once said that the next president who's going to come will enjoy more because President Hakainde Hichilema has set up some form of ground that the future, will benefit. Under the reign of President, Hakainde Hichilema, are we going to see an economic, turnaround that the people will say, yes, indeed, we have a president, or perhaps these are going to come after he's gone?
So much has already come when he's here. I gave you an example of people who already have an income that never had. Today, a number of council workers are moving and seen with integrity because they can get a living. For in a very long time, you see the Ministry of Local Government advertising positions for legal councils, which was unthinkable previously, because that institution collapsed in the pockets of cadres. Today, as we speak, my brother, we have reached a stage where farmers are appreciating that they never thought there will come a time when they can get their harvest, take to FRA, and they are paid instantly. That's running the country prudently. The second thing that I need to bring out, we never thought we would have a time as a country where we could have a leadership that would increase CDF from 1.6 million to 36.1 million, helping 200,000 youths graduating from vocational training colleges with skills training in carpentry, welding, metal fabrication, bricklaying, fish farming, tailoring for free. I remember I was engaging some youths in Kenya when I visited during the protests that they had. I was engaging them that, but don't you think there's a solution that you can? So I told them, wow, by the way, let me share something. In my country, we're training youths for free in these areas. They said, you see? Then I told them, in Zambia, we're even a free education. They say, there you are. In Zambia, we recruited 30,000 teachers. That there you are. There is no single country under the sun with that record, only in Zambia. Your country is the only country in the whole Africa which has managed to recruit 30,000 teachers in a year. And every year, the UPND government is recruiting in thousands. Why are we recruiting in thousands? Because there was recklessness where we are coming from, where so many graduates were thrown, but there were no spaces that were created. So you have a situation where even when we are getting thousands, we still have thousands on the street. If we had people that were running things the way UPND is running now, we wouldn't have been faced with the backlog of youths with different qualifications in thousands on the street. The situation could have been different. The idea of growing the mining sector so that we move from traditional exports to non-traditional mineral resources to be exported is also a way of creating jobs, thereby getting as many youths as possible find their livelihood in those mines. That's what it means. You had 112 artisanal mining licenses that were issued, allowing youths to undergo some training and be capacitated with cooperating partners so that they can better engage in mining activities. The 5 licenses that were given, gold mine licenses in Mumbu alone, should be part of those things that we need to relish as a country, that the government thinks about the youths and its own citizens as partners in national development. I should further indicate, my brother, that when you go to those that have never been to school, I've just talked about skills training.
Yep.
This is the message that is speaking for UPND when we go for by-elections. When you go to Mfuwe, you tell people about CDF. We seem to be speaking the same language with them. When we tell them about it, they understand what we're talking about. When we tell them about SAFE, helping farmers with money and running it alongside FISIP, we're speaking the same language. Then they're saying, then, why wouldn't we vote for you? What's happening? So, I should further indicate, my brother, that this year, already the Ministry of Health has announced that we're anticipating another 2,000. That's not a joke. citizens to be recruited.
Before we digress further, it's good you've brought in the issue of Mfuwe, because that's one of the issues that I wanted to discuss tonight. You have won a majority of the by-elections so far held from 2021, till date. Are you comforted, with the wins in these by-elections, owing to the fact that history tells us that and shows us that a ruling party, obviously would have such a record to win these by-elections, and it's for obvious reasons. In Mfuwe, for example, you had ministers flaunting Mfuwe, so much resources, went into Mfuwe, and so the possibilities of you losing the elections were next to zero.
Now, I don't know whether we are reading the same history, but I want to tell you that it's the other way around. Many a time had an opportunity to interview other opposition leaders under MMD. And one of the things that made us believe that MMD was gone was that they started losing by-elections as a ruling party. We had President Rupia Banda, who put Tenge materials, even dressing trees all over. Did that make them win when time was right? No. Secondly, we had Kenneth Kaunda, who bought almost every police officer a bicycle. Everywhere, the whole country. Did that make them win when time was right? Not at all. Here we are today. UPND is not having money to dish around because the president has been very clear. We are not going to use public resources to do what others were doing. He's reminding you to work, and work in order to earn a living. Even himself mentions it, he works. You see him going to the farm because that has been his lifestyle. Farming has become part of him. So now, to claim that history tells us that they are not telling the truth. Mr. Sata, I remember interviewing him saying, we have grabbed this seat from, he started with one parliamentary seat. We have grabbed this seat, we are also grabbing this one. Then he rose until he got to 22 seats in parliament. In other words, the ruling party started losing, my brother. How did President Sata get to 22 seats? How did he manage to get Luminda and others? He was gaining. Politics is about numbers. Make no mistake about it. It is not the people of Lusaka who are voting. It's the people of Mfuwe. Where you could hear Socialist Party in Kamwen. For Socialist Party, 0. NCP, 0. UPND over 40 votes. It means if the candidate of the candidates of the opposition were coming from that polling station, it meant that even the candidates themselves had no confidence in the opposition. They voted for UPND. That's what it means. Assuming they were voting from that polling station. That's where we have gotten to. Let us use reasonableness. When you look at the state of the opposition, you ask yourself, what is their manifesto? There is nothing, my brother. So you think citizens can't see? They have nothing to offer in the area of education. There is no journalist who is going to tell me what they are promising in the area of education. We will ask them to tell us what their solution is on electricity, other than the solution UPND is having now of putting up long-term measures. They will not tell you anything. You ask them right now about 36.1 million. They didn't even know where that money was going to come from. That's why they are on record of saying he's lying. Where will he get the money from? Here we are. When President H.H. said, we shall ensure that each constituency gets $1 million. But we have even exceeded $1 million per constituency. He told the youths that we shall reinstate meal allowances. We have reinstated in 2 universities. Now we have given all public universities meal allowances. That's where we are. Now, let me further mention that it is that message that we are using which is resonating with the people. For a villager, if you cannot value free education, for my mother in Mfuwe, in a remotest area, who is not on a salary, she has never seen a payslip from the time she was born. To be told, Mommy, your child will not pay examination fees, your child will not pay tuition fees, your child is even allowed to go in civil clothes if they have no uniform to go and attend classes. You don't know what that does to a villager. You may not see it today. You still think it's politics as usual. That message is strong for that mother in the remotest area. And these are the things that we are undermining. This is why they can't get votes there.
Now, they've openly said that, look, we're going to let them win these by-elections, but obviously the UPND has no chance to win the elections, in 2026. What are you saying to the opposition that feel that actually you are a one-term government as a UPND?
Andrew, the easiest way to understand the popularity of an individual is through the ballot. There is no other magic. The moment we saw PF struggling to win a by-election, we knew PF was gone. I want to demonstrate. When we saw that for PF to win a by-election in Kaoma, a soul or a life needed to be lost, and Lawrence Banda was gone, we knew they were gone. In other words, for them it was a matter of life and death to win a by-election, and yet they were in government. Beat UPND first of all, in case you have forgotten where we're coming from. PF was gone as early as 2016. The previous government, the president was in State House with about 22,000 votes. And UPND at that point, even after they rigged, you remember they contested the election of the president. Even after they had rigged, we knew that it just requires one constituency, then he's gone. Have you forgotten that there was no rerun? It was 50% plus one. If they were surviving by 22,000 votes somewhere there, or less than 100 or less than 200,000 votes in 2016, then they were knocked out by over 1.8 million. That is not a joke. Then when you say UPND doesn't stand a chance, who is saying UPND doesn't stand a chance? Who is going to beat UPND? Let's take, for instance, the biggest opposition right now are those that have parliamentary seats. PF. PF, my brother, is gone. Most of the MPs have left.
To where? To UPND.
They are working with those that mean well. And a number of them, for a record, actually want to stand on the UPND ticket. PF is gone. There's nothing to talk about. If I asked you today to give me a PF manifesto, you want to give me one. That's manifesto. And the question is, who is going to beat HH? Let's maybe talk about Kalaba. From the time we voted from multi-party democracy, there has never been a president who has no member of parliament who ever went to State House.
This is the one you're scared of as UPND?
No, I'm just giving you as an example. Secondly, let's get to Fred Membe. For a party to win elections, it must be growing its numbers at party level. Fred Membe is losing numbers, my brother. You can't be a few months before the general elections, then you are getting zero. UPND was in the opposition for more than 20 years. Where are you seeing them getting zeros? Under PF. Then for you to beat the incumbent, you must maintain the second position in all by-elections. There is no single political party that is maintaining the single position. Today is this one, that side is this one. This is total chaos. It's a circus.
There's a growing youth movement. And Bino Mpondo has announced that he's going to contest the elections. Does he look like a threat to the UPND?
No, it's a good question. Does he look like a threat? Meaning, it doesn't even look like. And then, I don't understand. Where are the structures? When you say there's a growing movement of youth, which youth are you talking about? Because UPND, HH himself was brought by the youth. They are the ones that voted overwhelmingly. And it is the youth who asked for job creation, which UPND is doing. You must be very careful when you talk about winning elections in 2026. Because the majority of the youth wanted jobs. Right now, if you have 10 friends, you will tell me that out of 10, at least 3 of your friends have been recruited. And now youths who are going into school and tertiary institutions have now hope that they will get jobs one day. Look, a bubble fish picked from Kafue River to Zambezi River is still a bubble fish. Pinwe was in PF. You should not expect that he will think beyond what you saw at their time. Nothing can come out of those people. They exhausted their IQ. And what they showed you in 2021 is how far they can go in reasoning. They had no single solution even to debt restructuring. They had no single solution to job creation. There was a job employment freeze. They had no single solution to CDF. Even pretending was very difficult. They failed to pay 1.6 million kwacha CDF. UPND came and looked for money and paid. We have so far completed over 120 secondary schools which they abandoned. You had universities which could be funded. Money is released, there is no university. People were supplying air to be paid. As we are speaking to my brother right now, you go on the street, you're going to discover that even the people, some of them you call cowboys, are doing something. Under that initiative I told you, 200,000 graduates for free. Skills training. They're doing something. So the youths, if you go to the university, you tell them that the PF is coming because we are getting Benue and Pondo. They know, oh, that's PF. Nothing can come out of there.
The Patriotic Fund. We remain with about 6 minutes to go, and I want to give you an opportunity to now explain to the Zambians why you think you deserve another 5-year term mandate as a UPND. We move step by step of some of the challenges that we've already highlighted on what is being done in the background to address these challenges. And I want you to be very to summarize. Number one, we have about less than 9 months before Parliament gets to be dissolved. We are still experiencing load shedding. Mr. Simuuwe, what is government doing in the background to ensure that this becomes an issue of the past? What is government doing to ensure that the prices of fuel go down? What is government doing in the background to ensure that the price of millennium, goes down? What is government, number 4, and lastly, what is government doing to ensure that the peace we've continued to have as a country is maintained now and beyond 2026?
We have extrapolated on issues of electricity, putting in place a framework. The Zambezi River Authority announced that in August they start relaxing towards August as they are monitoring the water levels. But it suffices to mention that for us to deal with the situation exhaustively, we must first of all appreciate and agree that there's been total dependence on hydro-generated power, and there's now a drift away in a graduating manner towards clean energy. It is not a lip service. Plants are being commissioned, and because load shedding is not the way it used to be 3 months ago, government, in the same manner that it was increasing, okay, that's the manner that it is decreasing bit by bit, because you cannot do it in an impromptu manner. So there is a hope for this country that moving forward, once these installations are done, should we be confronted with a similar situation of that devastating drought, we will not experience the biggest challenges that we experienced, because then we will have a fallback. Then also note that with this reduction in load shedding hours, there is a growing revamped mining sector, which is also demanding more power. Meaning, as government is looking at relaxing the number of hours, more manufacturing companies are opening, as your case may be, where you have now batteries being exported, manufactured in Chibombo, exported to 8 countries. Those machinery are using electricity. So, government is doing something. We can tick here, as could be evidenced from the Chisamba plant. Second, fuel. I've already talked about it. Pipeline to get crude, because what you used to have there was a separator and not a refinery. It had no capacity to get the crude and in. Now government has signed MOUs. You saw the company that is coming on the copper belt to set up one of the multi-million-dollar refinery to get it and deal with it. Then we can agree on setting of fuel for both countries, benefit the region, export, create jobs for the country. So The president is laying a foundation that is strong for the country and not doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Something different has been done. The next point which you raised, the issue of maize. The president is saying, instead of us getting maize plantation as a one-off thing tied to the rain season, we must take agriculture as an activity of January up to December through alternative or smart energy as well as irrigation. Speaking, government through Z to set up water harvesting initiatives like the 1,000 cubic waters dam being established in Mumbwa, which in a way will help farmers to irrigate. In addition to that, under CEEC, many farmers are accessing facilities and accessories to engage in irrigation equipment, meaning when they produce more and we have surplus, we can now export to attract forex to strengthen our currency. The next point that I want to bring out is that when many citizens participate in the production of mealie meal, as the case is now, out of government initiative to support irrigation farming, it means the prices can now start going down. Who are controlling the prices? Obviously, kudos also go to the people of Zambia who are responsive to a clarion call made by government that we need to get to the ground, because that is where our health, that is where our food security is. The Zambian people that responded positively could be seen on social media showcasing their harvest. And this is what makes the country developed. You cannot have a situation, Andrew, where your population is growing, but you are still dependent on the same number of farmers. It doesn't work. We must all get to participate. When we have surplus, then we can take agriculture as a business. This is what the president and his government stand for. Thank you.
And on peace?
This is self-explanatory. Whoever breaks the law is on their own. The president has been a proponent of the upholding of the rule of law and stands by it. UPND as a party stands and rallies behind the presidential pronouncement on the need for us to have mutual respect, being able to share different platforms, disagree and agree to disagree, and yet moving towards economic emancipation and coming up with poor policies that will help citizens move away from abject poverty. So peace is one thing that should be cherished, because there can be no economic development where there is no peace. So peace does not operate exclusively when it comes to issues of economic development. So we need peace for there to be development. Thank you.
Mr. Simuuwe, UPND Media Director, thank you so much for making time to appear on tonight's edition of Costa. We've been discussing the 4 years of the UPND government and whether the UPND does deserve another 5-year mandate as the countdown for the 2026 officially begins. The elections are slated for next year in August and Parliament gets to be dissolved in May. Good night and see you again on Sunday for another exclusive edition of Costa. My name is